Well, welcome back to Morning Coffee in this segment of the Expert Series. Keisha, this is the first time you've joined us on the Expert Series.
It is.
And the Expert Series is something that I created with bringing experts on Morning Coffee to talk about what their expertise is.
Love it, love it, love it.
And the first expert I brought on was this gentleman who's joining us right now on Tuesdays, and his name is Jimmy LaRose. And he's the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Nano. And Jimmy's also brought a Bishop Redfern on, and also he's a co-founder and of the gift RampUp. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, good. So welcome, gentlemen, to Morning Coffee, the Expert Series, and let's kick it off by talking about the gift RampUp.
Well, guys, nonprofits, they really appreciate the fact that there's needs to be met, there's lives to be saved, and quite often and too often, we dedicate ourselves to serving a population that can't actually pay. Most of the time, nonprofits, unless they're providing fee for service like a hospital or a university, they find themselves chasing after a need and meeting it. But in order for them to scale their mission, they have to build financial capacity.
Right.
And for most nonprofits, and wait for it, that means you have to stop serving kids for a minute and go out and get the cash you need to scale your mission and achieve significant impact. So Joe and Keisha, sometimes it really takes a shift in thinking for a nonprofit or a CEO or a founder, if you know what I mean, to understand that they're running a small business. Joe, Keisha, I was wondering if I could maybe explain to our audience and our viewers today the similarities and the differences between a for-profit corporation and a nonprofit corporation.
Please do.
Absolutely. I think that's so important for them to understand.
Thanks for that. A for-profit corporation has owners. And if it's a publicly traded company, it has shareholders that are then represented by a board of directors. So the shareholders are represented by board of directors, and the CEO is accountable to that board of directors. That's the for-profit side of civil society. The nonprofit side of civil society says this: the community at large owns the nonprofit. The community does. They are the shareholders. And what we would traditionally call a nonprofit board of directors, they represent the community's interest in making sure that the organization is well run. But whether it's for-profit or it's nonprofit, we've got to get away from this idea of executive directors on the nonprofit side and understand that a CEO, a chief executive officer, is responsible for two things: generating the cash that allows it to accomplish its mission and being accountable for significant impact, for growth, for transformed lives. And the CEO is responsible to the nonprofit board of directors, who then in turn is actually responsible to the community at large. So I would kind of argue that there is no difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit. You can pay people generously salaries at a nonprofit. Just the difference is, at the end of the years, the monies that are left over, they don't go to the shareholders in the form of cash. They go to the shareholders, the community, in the form of impact. Now, Keisha and Joe, I may have just caused a lot of confusion. How did I do on trying to make that contrast?
I totally was on board with you. As a CEO, a founder, an entrepreneur, I have these conversations with the businesses that I do strategize for all the time. I can't tell you how many times I have people come to me and they say, I want to be a nonprofit organization. I want to be a registered 501(c), right? And a lot of the times my response to them is, do you understand how you must operate under a 501(c) versus how you would operate under a limited liability corporation, S Corp, C Corp, whatever election it is that you were to choose? And oftentimes people say no. So I love the fact that you explained it so eloquently, because it's very important for people who are in business, either nonprofit or for-profit, or people who are looking to get into business, to understand the very distinct difference between the two.
Keisha, thank you for that. And now that we've established that these are two corporations, they do have shareholders, there is accountability, and there is a CEO, we have found that 80 or 90% of founders are very passionate about a particular cause, a particular issue, a particular population. And they don't necessarily understand that they're overseeing an enterprise that they have to be both financially responsible for and have to be responsible for impact. I'm fond of telling the story about that lovely lady who made pies. She worked on the factory line. And every Christmas, she would make pies for all her fellow employees. And they loved her pies, and they said to her one day, you know, you need to go into the pie making business. And she said, oh, can you imagine? If I could make pies and take care of my family, it'd be a dream come true for me. So she went out and she got a small business loan, mortgaged her home, and she started a pie making company. And she soon found out that the minute you start a pie making company, you never get to make pies anymore. You have to run a company. And I'm afraid nonprofit executives and founders come into the nonprofit sector wanting to implement a program, but not understanding that they're overseeing an enterprise where program is only one part of it. Arguably, in the beginning, the smallest part of it, so we can build the financial capacity and order for us to go to scale with our mission.
Yeah, it's so valuable to have this conversation, especially because one of the biggest foundational principles of a nonprofit is fundraising, right? Making sure that you have the funds to be able to operate the entity. So I think that this is so valuable.
Well, Redfern is with us today, and he is one of the co-designers of the Major Gifts RampUp model. Red, what role do you see capacity building playing and cash acquisition playing in a nonprofit?
I'm glad you used the example of a for-profit business compared to a nonprofit business. In order to obtain capital, the goal is still the same. When we look at the stock market and see how people invest in businesses and have a common interest in an outcome and a goal, and that is to make profit and to have impact. There are two things that you want to consider: the worth and value of the product to the community, and the worth and the value of the product to the board of directors and the shareholders. Well, there's no difference. I want to share with you what I call the last patriot, the first responders. We now see that there are a group of people who are working diligently to remake this American dream, this idea. They work in hospitals, they work in schools, nurseries, they work in caring organizations, they work with veterans, and they want to give the best service. And what we don't realize, this is the last patriotic pillar of our society. This is the glue that holds America together. This is the glue, the caring, the love between men and women, between families and community that holds us together as a country, as a family, as a neighborhood. And what does it take? In a capitalistic society, there could be plenty of caring, but unless you have the capacity to execute it, you have nothing. And so each one of these patriots needs a salary. Each one of these patriots has responsibility, children. And so development is the most important thing, because in a capitalistic society where there is no fun, patriotism sort of sputters out. And so, Jimmy, you've given us a great example that you cannot sell enough car washes, cannot have enough banquets to fund the major enterprise of this patriotism that holds America together. We've seen that the president and the Congress, they've come together and they have the Special Infrastructure Act. You cannot have roads built, hospitals built. You cannot have schools built selling pies, doing car washes. So the nonprofit or the patriotic side of America needs to have a consistent way to have funds delivered on its doorstep. And so this is where Major Gift RampUp comes in. Instead of having a car wash, a banquet every year, a golf tournament, we want nonprofits to consider themselves the same as Apple Computer, where the community can make a major investment in the activities done by the nonprofit and yet be able to get a major return. Major return in working with our veterans, a major return in after-school care for our children, a major return in the wounded veterans, because these patriots are part of America. And America only goes because we compensate people who provide a service. So Major Gift RampUp is the tools necessary to bring in the funds, the real dollars and cents, the oxygen for each nonprofit. And this is what we've dedicated our lives to.
You know, that's such a simple premise and stuff, and it's so important. Why aren't people enveloped in this? Why aren't people grasping what you're talking about?
Well, I think the first thing is piety. A lot of piety in the West. There's this awful question, and people think they're so brilliant when they ask it. So they're approaching a nonprofit executive, and then they ask this, but how much of my money goes directly to the children? How much of my money goes directly to the children? As though these patriots that Redfern just referenced are going into the nonprofit sector to serve people in order to line their pockets with avarice, consumption, and greed. Friends, here's the answer to how much of your money goes directly to the children. Whether there's money spent on administration, whether there's money spent on fundraising, whether there's money spent on direct services, all of your money, to 99% of all nonprofits, all of your money goes directly to the children. Because without these structures in place at the nonprofit, and by the way, friends, how do you make sure you have the best, the well-executed, the CEOs that actually know how to administrate? Well, I'll tell you what, you do have to take care of them financially. And we don't apologize for that, because Major Gifts fundraising is attracting the donor that understands how enterprise works. Mm-hmm. Do you know that I have a major donor that will only invest in a nonprofit if he can restrict his gift to health benefits for the employees? He only will give a gift because he's a leader. He has 700 employees and understands that when he gives to a nonprofit, he wants to improve the quality of the life that are people on the front line, these patriots, so he restricts his gifts to health benefits. So how much of that money is going directly to the children? Right. I'd argue all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We got to take a break real quick, but we're going to come right back with the Bishop and Jimmy in 1 minute.
Money is oxygen. Without it, charity can't breathe. Are you receiving the finances you require to accomplish your important mission? If you're a nonprofit executive, board member, development officer, pastor, volunteer, or marketing director, it's time for you to reimagine philanthropy in a way that transforms both you and the organization you serve. Introducing Major Gifts RampUp. This unique approach to fund development will challenge everything you believe about the raising of money and will make 5, 6, and 7-figure major gifts available to your organization in the shortest period of time possible. Major Gifts RampUp is not nonprofit management 101. Spend time with fundraising veterans who've raised millions and will inspire you to build financial capacity in ways you've never dreamed possible. To make your Major Gifts RampUp conference reservation, visit nonprofitconferences.org. That's nonprofitconferences.org.
Well, welcome back again to this edition of Morning Coffee and the Experts Series portion of it.
That's right.
And we've got Jimmy LaRose and Reverend and Bishop Redfern joining us.
Yes, we do.
Talk about the major gift ramp-up, okay, which is a really important thing for nonprofits.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Jimmy, I believe that you are going to actually show us how this works.
Right.
I appreciate that, Keisha and Joe. Friends, many nonprofits do fundraising, and Redfern referenced it a minute ago. Mud runs, this wacky social media, galas, golf events, et cetera, and all of the time that goes into these events, and the net return does not justify the type of investment we're making in our traditional forms of fundraising. However, the shortest period of time possible, with the least amount of expense, with the highest return, and I'll say it again, the shortest period of time possible, with the highest return for the least amount of expense, is major gifts fundraising. I can raise in 90 days $1 million gift, where it may take you 4 months to host a golf tournament and raise $25,000. So that's why Redfern and I, years and years ago, created the major gifts ramp-up model. Major gifts ramp-up, there's 3 phases. There's a planning phase, there's a building phase, there's an inviting phase. And our management philosophy is simply this. Chapter 1, we've got to invite people to put a bulldozer through their calendar as CEOs and go after the cash that they need. We then say, if you're going to go after cash, do major gifts fundraising. If you want to be credible with a major donor, you have to perform organizational development, chapter 3.
Right.
Then when that's all done, you put it in compelling case for support. There will always be generous people who will amply support your great dream when it's backed by a sound plan. We make sure that we calendar our fundraising efforts. We then identify every single millionaire in your community. We know them all. We have all their names and addresses. We then introduce them to your case for support in a non-fundraising event, non-fundraising awareness event, chapter 7. We then follow up with every one of those people who stepped into our universe, and we listen our way to their best gift. We then may have an evening event where people get to invest for the first time, but that's the building phase is over. We go then to the inviting phase, and after we've done those first 2 phases, planning and building, we then earn the right to invite a person to give their best gift ever. We do that with a campaign cabinet. These peers of these donors invite them to give their best gift, and they do the 3-part ask. Jack and Jan, we thank you for your gift at the banquet. We thought you'd like to do that for 5 years for a total of $50,000, $10,000 a year. Jack and Jan, you know that we're doing a renovation. We thought we'd like to name the auditorium in your name for $1 million gift. And Jack and Jan, we look forward to finding out what role your estate plan can play and helping you and us accomplish our endowment goal. So I just did in about 2 minutes what it takes us takes 2 days to do at a major gifts ramp-up event. If you go to nonprofitconferences.org, nonprofitconferences.org, you can register for any of our events across the United States. Redfern and I have been doing this in Europe and India and Asia and Indonesia, in the Middle East and Jerusalem. Friends, it's normative human relations. It's timeless. You'll never be able to beat building a friendship and helping a donor accomplish their personal goals by investing in your organization.
Wow. I have to say, Bishop and Jimmy, the most striking portion to this for me was the fact that you're having conversations at non-fundraising events. I think that must be a truly impactful piece to this, as typically when we're engaging with a nonprofit organization, the events that we're going to, we're expected to give some sort of donation, some sort of gift, as you guys say it, at the end or during at some point. I love the fact that you've strategically placed a non-fundraising event in there.
Keisha, you're just killing me. That's one of the strongest parts of this model. How many times have you been invited to look under the hood, kick the tires, find out what that great dream is, backed by a sound plan, but right there in the moment, you're required to give a gift. And friends, the reason you have these banquets is so you can extract as much money as possible without actually being in relationship with people. But what if we first identified every foundation, corporation, and individual of net worth in this particular community of yours, a service footprint, if you will. And we made sure it was a creative luncheon, and it was the meeting not to be missed on that Tuesday or Thursday. And we invited, and it says on the invitation, this is not a fundraising event. And then these individuals come together, we take them to the mountaintop, we ruin them at this event, certainly, for their compelling case for support. And at the end, we say, friends, if we give you a ring, will you take our call? And the group says yes. And then we're off to the races and individual relationships where we're able to really find out what a person's goals are, help them accomplish it, and listen our way to their best investment.
Yeah.
Fundraising is a non-relational activity. Development is a relational activity. Now, all nonprofits are not acting as if they're tin canning, they're car washing. When we look at the major structures in this country, our hospitals, private schools, our colleges, university, even the NFL was a nonprofit, but they developed relationships. It is only in a relationship that you have discussions about mutual interests. And so this model takes in consideration the interests of the donor over the interests of the receiver. It is not about how much money I can get, but it's about how much the donor can give and why. And so this is a donor-centric model. It is to say that the only purpose of the nonprofit is for the donor to be able to give through the nonprofit and accomplish the goals that the donor has in mind. And this works so beautifully. We've seen college after college, university after university, they do not have a fundraising department. They have a development department. And the development is not just to develop a relationship to get money. It's a development relationship on vision, purpose, mission, where minds come together to accomplish great things. Let me give you an example of a great development encounter. Perhaps you've heard this guy by the name of Christopher. He had a relationship with a lady named Isabella. And he went and shared this great vision of a new world, of an earth that was not flat, with Isabella. And Isabella became fascinated with the idea of how her country could profit by having a shorter route to India. And she began to adopt and cling onto that vision. And so she gave through Columbus, through him, to get a route to India. And from that, the Americas was founded. So for the first development officer, the first patriot, America was founded and the new world was opened. So these door openers happen not because of fundraising, but rather because of development.
Boy, that's a great story and a great way to put that, I'll tell you. That resonates with everybody that's watching the program right now, Reverend. And you know, we're at the part of our program right now where we'd like you to really look in the cameras and tell people how they can reach you and who should call you.
Joe and Keisha, thank you for the opportunity to always come on the Expert Series and invite your viewers to join us. Whether you're a board member, a staff member, whether you're a volunteer, you could be a pastor, you could be a founder, we'd invite you to join us for Major Gifts RampUp. It is a 2-day event, and you can go to nonprofitconferences.org. That's nonprofitconferences.org. These events occur 1, 2, 3 times a month, all across the United States. You can participate virtually if you would like. And we look forward to introducing to you the quickest way, the fastest way, the most effective way to receive the funds that you need to accomplish your important mission. That's Major Gifts RampUp at nonprofitconferences.org.
That is amazing. Jimmy, Bishop Redfern, thank you both so much for being here with us this morning and sharing all of this amazing information. We truly, truly appreciate it. To all of our viewers out there, thank you for joining us on Morning Coffee. Make sure that you stay tuned on RVN TV Network for the rest of the day. We have some phenomenal shows coming up. As always, our Tuesday lineup is really fun. With that being said, I'm Keisha Butler-Thomas with Joe Asamundi. I'll be back on Thursday along with you, Joe.
I'll be here.
See you guys then.
Yeah. Thank you.